Hello and welcome to the Matching Mom Jeans podcast. I'm Shelby.
I'm Nicole, and it's nice to see you. I'm so sorry we have delayed recording twice this week because I had strep throat.
At least your voice works now.
I know.
It's better than you being Oscar the Grouch on
I
the
know.
podcast.
My son was not a fan. He was also, neither of them were happy about me wearing a mask. But so far, if we make it to tomorrow morning, nobody else in my house has gotten it. Like, I was so
And then she just
careful.
jinxes it right there.
No, I'm not going to. I'm not going to. This is it's the opposite of jinxing it. It's manifesting it. Manifesting. No one in my house is sick.
I heard someone
Supposedly.
say the other day that they still hadn't got COVID. And I was like,
Oh, no.
you just basically licked a doorknob. You licked every doorknob in the town in
Yeah,
that
no.
moment. Why would you say that?
No, that's very different. That's very different.
At this
Because
point, you have to lie and say that you got COVID just so that COVID doesn't come for you.
yeah, don't put any flags up. Just that's like saying, "Yay, the zombies never found my house."
Oh, bom, bom, bom.
Yeah, no. So, well, knock on wood, but I really am proud about the efforts, the Herculean efforts that we have gone to this week to keep children who do lick doorknobs clean. I have actually Lysoled the uh, doorknobs about 4 times a day. So they're
Makes me
really
feel
just
like I need to Lysol my doorknobs
they're just really. Oh, and I really have
from 2 states away.
I have really, no joke, really just capitalized on the fact that if we have this like aerosolized spray hand sanitizer, just like the sunscreen ones. Um, and I got them very excited about put your hands out and I'll spray them and then you can rub your hands together and like we made a dance out of it. Oh, yeah. We're
Nice.
doing that. They're now asking to wash their hands.
My daughter always asks to wash her hands. Every time she sees any sort of sink, she goes, hand, hand, hand. Because it's basically a water table to her. She loves it. She loves it
Yeah.
very much. She also doesn't appreciate non-foamy soap.
Yeah, it's not as much
So,
fun.
if anyone would like to help us monetize the podcast for the sake of the foamy soap budget that is needed in my house, I am running out of raspberry and foamy soap money.
Oh,
We're
yes.
going to have to start playing ads.
The most expensive part of owning children is bubbles and fruit.
The bubbles also just go so fast.
Yeah, they really do.
Or as my daughter
My
says, so fast.
so fast. Yeah, no, actually no joke. We have been like really loving the water and the splashing and the everything. And then my 2-year-old's eczema has flared up because of water. And I was like,
Oh,
"Oh, buddy, the thing you love has bitten you." Like,
summer. Summer is not for everyone. Everyone is for summer. Summer is not for everyone. Eczema
exactly.
people, we're so sorry that summer
Yeah.
is mean to you.
The
And
doctor called
winter's mean to eczema. Eczema just sucks.
It really does. The doctor called in steroids, and I was like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." Like a steroid cream to like help with this one. Also, we had to like buzz his hair really short. It's very cute. It wasn't what I wanted, but we had to buzz his hair really short because of the eczema and the whole deal. And I was really sad because he
I think
doesn't
he
look like
looks
a
great
little.
though.
I know, but I really liked his Albert Einstein feral looking hair that stuck up everywhere.
I love when tiny children have grown up hair. I
Yeah,
mean, like, don't put a Karen haircut on your, 3-year-old little girl or anything, but I love it. Especially
yeah.
when like when little boys have the cute little like shaved top and then the like floopy.
I mean,
I
that's
don't
what
know
it
how to
is,
explain this.
basically.
Yeah, it's like it's the sides are real short and then the part is a little thicker than normal.
Yeah,
And then
that's what
it's
it
got like the
is.
nice swoosh. Like that's so cute. It's so
Yeah,
cute. And then put little polo and some khakis on that little baby and you've got a set. You are set. Family
yeah.
photos will never be the same.
I know. And it really is really cool for summer, which is nice. Like he's not sweating as much. So I appreciate that. Like he used to take off his bike helmet and just like look like he'd had a shower. So like I appreciate it. I appreciate that he's not dying as much as he was in the heat.
Oh my
But
gosh, the heat. We have something else to talk about today, but first, um, I'm a summer gal. Okay, if it's 85 degrees, I'm thriving. I love the heat. That is just who I am as a person. I like sunshine. I like heat. I love to have, an icy cold drink in my hand. It's good. The only summer I didn't just thrive was the summer I was pregnant, and even then, I still spent time outside for very long periods of time. My 17-month-old daughter doesn't get out of the car anymore without like bribery because she just goes, hot,
hot. Love that
hot.
for you.
And it's
I
like,
love
I
that.
know it's hot. We're at the grocery store. We're going inside. They have air conditioning in there. It will be okay. And then it's like,
Nope.
no, hot. And I'm like, okay, we still have to go inside. It's like, do you want me to run fast? We can run fast. It's like
Exactly.
booking it across the grocery store parking lot so that she's not screaming hot at everyone.
Yeah. Well,
Hates
and
it. Hates the heat.
she's a redhead too, so she's got some extra reasons to hate the sun. Like,
She gets like cherry tomato colored
I
within
know.
like 5 seconds of being outside. It's like
Yeah.
I think she may need to figure out how to sweat because
Yeah.
otherwise she's going to explode.
Yeah. I get it. I totally get it. Well, so it's interesting because I was listening to another podcast that I really like, Ladies and Tangents, which is not family friendly, people. Don't listen to it with
Podcast
your children.
Inception, a podcast
Podcast.
within a podcast.
Yeah. And they were talking about, like, I don't know if this was last week or a week before or whatever, but they were talking about like finding your why and how it's helped with their mental health and their professional goals and how your why changes over the years. And it was a really interesting thing. And I wanted to kind of like
Your
put it
why,
in
like
like,
being mindful about why you're living your life or why you're making your decisions, kind of why.
kind of, it kind of goes back to the conversation, or at least the way I think of it, kind of goes back to like what fills your cup. But I think there's a overarching concept of like what guides you, like what makes the end of the day worth it. So like for me, I was really thinking about this while I was listening to the podcast, and that was why I wanted to have this conversation. Is like, for me, my why is, I don't care if people think that I'm a good mom. I do, however, care greatly about raising good humans. And so, like, it doesn't, like, you could walk up and tell me, hey, you're a great mom every single day. And it would kind of roll off me. Like, I would appreciate it. But it doesn't hold any weight compared to when somebody says, wow, your child is being really well behaved, or your child is really engaging with friends, or your child is a good friend to their friends. You know, I really I want to raise good humans. I want them to have the skills to exist happily in their lives. So it's kind of like if I had to like lay out two things, like I want to raise good humans, but not in the like weird, oh, they have to be perfect or, good in the
Not
way that we've kind
necessarily
of.
successful financially or
Yes.
like that would be
And well,
great.
and we've placed like a morality on good. That's not what I mean. I mean like functioning, highly happy in their lives, glad they're here humans. Um, like I don't want my children to be miserable. Like that is, I want them to have the skills. I want them to have, like, one of the hardest periods of my life was when my stepson, well, and Rory, they were both having adjustment issues for different things throughout the pandemic. And that was one of the hardest parts of the pandemic for me, was watching my children be impacted by it and be kind of miserable and not knowing what kind of skills any of us needed to have to get through it. And so I couldn't really teach them the skills that they needed to get through it. And I think there are probably a lot of parents who felt that way. But, I wouldn't say that if somebody doesn't walk up to me every single day and compliment my children, that I'm not happy. It's more about internally, like intrinsically, what helps you get up the next day and do it all over again. And
Mm, okay.
for me, it's about kind of the skills. It's kind of about like, you know, seeing your child start to have a meltdown, my child start to have a meltdown, and then be able to calm and respond to me calming and things like that.
So your why for why you are home this week, why you are mediating sibling fights and stuff is you want your children to be able to cope.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like
Okay.
I want them to not have it easy in the world, but to not be the hard thing in their lives. Like I've seen and worked
Hmm.
with children and teens for so long, and like, not victim blaming in any way, but sometimes they are the hardest part of their own lives. Like not being able to cope, or having made difficult choices that have backed them into a corner, or, things like that. Like I want my children to have the skills to cope and walk through life no matter what it's throwing at them. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
see. Yeah, emotionally capable coping. Those goals. So what I'm kind of hearing is that like maybe we all have huge overarching whys.
Yes, yeah.
And especially if you dig into like religion or anything like that, like there's big huge whys out there. But
Yeah.
then
And
like
there's
the why am I interested in this? Why do I not want my child to throw their food on the floor? Why do I not, like why are why? Like there can be lots of different levels.
levels, and I think for like categories, like professionally, my why is different, because professionally I don't work with children anymore. I work with parents, and I want parents to have the skills to help their children, and I want parents to find their own whys. But I also think, I was just listening to the two women on that podcast on Ladies and Tangents, and they were talking about all of the different ways. And I don't know if they said this or if then I later read it when I was researching, but there was this really great line that was, it's much easier to find your why when you get to um, the end of the day and you feel incredibly frustrated, and you start thinking backwards of what went wrong. And I was thinking about a conversation that you and I had where nothing was really wrong in your interactions with your daughter, but she wasn't using the communication that she has the skills of.
Mm,
And so you weren't mad at her at all. You weren't even really frustrated with her. I think you were
but I
hurt.
remember this day and I felt like a failure.
Exactly. Like I think you were hurt on her behalf. Like I have failed my daughter because she's not able
Well,
to like, transition this. And I think every parent has had that moment where it's like, I know you have this skill. I also know that something's keeping you from using this skill, and that's making me feel like I'm not doing what I need to, or that's making me have mom guilt, or those types of things.
well,
And
I think that different seasons of life and maybe even different seasons of parenting, don't know, haven't got that far yet. But maybe different seasons of parenting
stage
are going to
one.
have different whys.
Oh
And like
yeah.
if we're talking about this example specifically, I can explain in the terms of my why, I can explain exactly why that day was so frustrating. How many times are we going to say the word why this episode? I feel like it's going to be a lot.
I don't know.
But
Does anyone want to make it a drinking
so
game?
oh, not while children are present.
um,
Um,
in that case, get some M&Ms, and every time we say why, just throw those M&Ms back.
yes, yeah. Um, but it's going to be a lot. So, as we know, I am a licensed environmental engineer who has a job that she loves, loves, loves. And I am currently cosplaying as a stay-at-home mom.
Cosplaying.
I've taken a year off of
I
unpaid leave
know.
to be home with my daughter. And when we talk about these whys of why I did that, my daughter was not thriving in daycare, and there were some compounding issues um, with like the care that she was in herself, and the the pressures
Terrifying.
on my own job because I had so much going on. So it was a complicated issue. But the reason why I said that we were only taking I was only taking a year off as opposed to just like, no, I can't do this. I'm going to stay home. This is where my heart's desire is. My heart's desire will always be with her. But I had never planned on being home for any long extended period of time. And I wasn't even sure I really wanted to. And I have enjoyed the time, but I have also enjoyed knowing that the time has an end. Um and that I
Yeah,
can go back to
that's
work.
that's super valid. As somebody who has been attempting to ease back into the business world with no end in sight.
Right? But so
Because
when we made these decisions, one thing that my husband was very specific about, which I guess we would call defining my why, he was like, well, if we're going to make these decisions and it's going to be 6 months or a year and a half or 2 years, we need to figure out like what makes the most sense. And I remember telling him that if I was going to take this time off, I wanted to take this newly crawling, helpless, little sweet tiny baby who was miserable at
yeah,
daycare.
I
And I
remember
wanted
those
to
pictures.
spend this, I mean, every day they sent me multiple pictures of her just crying her eyes out all
I
day,
know.
every day. And then
She
I would
just
pick
looked
her up and she hadn't drank a single bottle and she hadn't slept for a minute and she was 8 months old. We were miserable.
yeah, it was really bad.
And I just
And
remember
then
thinking, like, is it really going to look like this in a year? Like when she is 20 months old,
yeah.
is this really going to look like this? And the thing is I had this just whole discussion about how this year of her life is very different than year 5 to 6 of her life or
Yeah.
9 to 10 of her life in terms of two very, very, very specific things: communication and mobility.
Yeah.
And I
Exactly.
wanted to give her one, the space and time that she needed to learn communication and mobility skills, and also spend time with her knowing that teaching her that she can ask for things. She can
Yeah.
either get it herself or she can ask. And we have worked so hard on that, and I'm so proud that we are going into summer with a highly mobile, highly motivated, and honestly quite highly vocal child.
Yeah.
Like she will tell you when she's hungry. She knows the sign and the word for eat. She
You
knows dinner. She knows lunch. She will
yeah.
communicate if she's tired. The cutest thing in the world is that now whenever she yawns, she goes, "I'm tired." And I'm like, "What?" I mean, I understand that like when she eventually goes back to daycare, obviously she's going to have a schedule. She's not going to be, they're not going to be like, okay, you're tired. Like, let's put you to bed. Let's drop everything and put you to bed right
Yeah.
now. But she will be able to communicate that. And someone hopefully will be able to look at her and say, you're tired? Nap time is just after lunch. We're going to eat our lunch and then do nap. Or
Yeah.
communicate with her and her just not be there crying like she was.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure it wasn't
Or
fun for the
even
daycare instructors either.
Or even just know, like you said, like even just be able to notate, okay, I'm seeing this young child having meltdown after meltdown after meltdown. Oh, she said earlier in the day that she was really tired. I'm going to communicate with mom and see if something happened last night, or maybe mom can be on guard of
Right.
like, well, maybe she's getting a tooth, or maybe she's having a hard time, maybe she's getting sick, there's more
Can
data
we
is
adjust
always
her
more
bedtime and get
helpful.
her more sleep or whatever? Like for her to be able to communicate, that was the whole reason. Like if I had to say one why, that was the whole reason why I took a year off work was because I did not want her helpless. I did
Yeah.
not want the people taking care of her helpless. I did
Yeah.
not want it to be the only person in the world who can tell the difference between this cry or that cry is me.
Yeah.
You know?
I
And I
totally get
honestly,
that.
like, a lot of people don't have the privilege and the flexibility that I did, and they just have to go through that transition, and the daycare
Yeah.
teachers have to learn how to read their child, or their child has to learn to
How to
read the room,
communicate.
and crying's not gonna help them, kinda thing.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I feel like that's just an example of how, strong-willed my child is, because she went, like, almost 3 months, and she never figured it out, and they never figured it out, and They were not speaking the same language.
She's a mountain shaker is what she is. She will.
She was going to scream at the mountain until it did what she wanted it to do.
Yeah, she's not necessarily a I'll just go around the mountain kind of girl. She's a my daddy and my mommy are engineers, so you either build me a tunnel through this or I'm just gonna knock it down.
Well, and it was just like, it's heartbreaking.
It
Because I
really
know
was.
other I had friends whose kids went to daycare at the same time. And the first few weeks we were all in the oh my gosh, this is never going to be okay kind of phase that
Yeah.
all parents go through during daycare. And then their children adjusted.
Yeah.
And
Well,
mine did not.
and then again, like different people have different whys. Like for me, one of my major whys that I'm at home right now is financial. Like I cannot afford, I mean, like my career is less paying than daycare is. And so like my why is
America.
literally
Hashtag America.
right? I mean, my why is partially financial and then I've been able to build off of that because if I only talked about like, well, I'm at home with the kids because I can't afford to pay someone else, like that would be really depressing to myself. Like, and instead digging into the whys of like, okay, my husband asked me way back when, he was like, why would we pay for someone else to take care of our children while you go and take care of other people's children? He's like, it feels like we could just cut out the
Fair.
middleman. Yeah. And I mean, and I have the skills to
But
do that.
if that
Again,
was your only source of satisfaction, that's okay.
exactly.
Because
Well, that's
I
what I
was
was going to
scared
say
that that
is,
was what mine was going to be. Like,
yeah.
I had a
Well,
trial basis because I was scared that it was not going to work. In fact, before I took time off, I offloaded everything else off my plate. We were using
yeah.
a meal service, we had a cleaning service, we had offloaded childcare to daycare. I mean, like everything. I
Yeah.
was full mental health crisis. I was full time crisis. I was not thriving at work. I was not thriving at home. I was not thriving as a wife. I was not thriving as a mother. I was not thriving as a Shelby. Like I was not thriving.
Yeah.
And then
Well, and
my
I,
daughter was also not thriving and my husband was also not thriving. And it came down to if we can't move these mountains,
we
what
have to find
can
a
we
way
do?
around them.
And what we could do was stop, reset, get through this time, get
Yeah.
her set, try again. And when we try again, it may not work. When
Yeah.
we try again, I don't know what to do. But I do know that even if she is not loving her next care situation, we will be able to communicate with her because I can communicate with her right now. I can tell her, your nap happens in your bed. The other day,
Yeah.
I just told her she did not want to take a nap. And I said, it is nap time. We spend nap time in our bed.
Yep.
Nap time is for beds. And I will see you after nap time.
Yeah.
I just
We
walked
do
away,
that
and I thought she was
sometimes.
gonna scream and cry at me, and she just sat down, and she played Itsy Bitsy Spider with herself. I could see her on the monitor. She clapped her hands, she stomped her feet, she played Itsy Bitsy Spider with herself, and she just, like she has her lovey in there, and and then, like, 10 minutes later, she just lays down and goes to sleep, and I was like I texted my husband, I said, "I cannot even begin to explain to you the weird witchcraft that just happened during nap time."
Well, and actually, fun fact, my husband can do that with my son and I can't, and I just really feel like that's the perfect explanation of how my son views us. It's very funny because yeah, my husband could just like put him in his room and go, "Okay, it's nap time slash quiet time," and that he'll just like enjoy it, man. And I'm
Right?
just
And
like,
so I am hopeful that we have reached a level of communication. We have reached a level of her somewhat self-sufficiency or at least mobility where we can go to daycare and we can say we will be back after nap
yeah. Well, and
and like explain things.
I really hope that like people are able to be introspective enough to know if their why doesn't match someone else's and can claim that. Like I have a friend whose why is I need to be working. I need that time for my brain to work. I will not be okay if I am not using my degree, using my brain, using my critical thinking. Like, I can't just sit there all day and keep a child alive. And I respect that. I
Oh
respect the
man.
hell out of that,
Yeah.
because like it's I the only, well, I don't want to say it this way cuz it sounds harsh. I'll say it a different way. I will always respect someone's why, someone's motivation, someone's goals more so than an aimless person who's just wandering through life and not bothering. Now, if you're struggling to find what motivates you, that's a completely different conversation. And that's a completely different mental health state. But I do know some individuals who just kind of wander, and then they're like, "Well, I'm not happy." And it's like, "Okay, well, what would make you happy? What do you think happy would look like for you?" And they're not really able to even go, and I'm like, well, what have you thought of, what have you ruled out? um and I see that so often with people that I work with in my career, is like, you're always going to feel a little bit more grounded if you know the direction you're trying to walk. um and I had a really interesting um conversation with someone the other day, and I'm gonna like walk through, because like you said, there are different stages of parenting. And so if you
We
aren't
hope.
if you aren't sure where to start, there is a breakdown. Like, in the parenting education world, there is a breakdown that we tell people, and that is literally like infant to toddlerhood. Your entire job is to be the holder of your child's life, like the actual giver of care, caregiver, life holder. You keep your child from dying. Like, that's it. A lot of their other development stuff, like, yes, your child needs interaction, yes, your child needs support as they grow these developments, but a lot of that is out of your control. Ask that to any parent whose child walked late. Like, it's out of your control. You cannot make your child do these things on time. Then you move into early childhood, hood, and you take a small step back, just a tiny one, and you're a guardian, you're a lifeguard, you're the bumper rails of bowling. Like, I'm just gonna keep you out of the gutter. I don't really care how fast or slow you go. You're gonna boing around, whatever. You may knock some pins down, you may not, but either way, I'm gonna keep you out of the gutter. Like, that's a big thing. And then, um, you know, in your early teens, you're the safe base. Like, that middle school age, like, your whole job, and this can help you find your why, because your whole job is to just be a safe base for
Right.
them to figure out and explore. You're the
The
person
developmental stages your child's going through helps
should
you
impact
see
you.
kind of where your why is at.
Yeah, because by the
Your why
time
as a
it
mother.
gets
Maybe this
to
isn't your personal why, because personally, I would like to be my daughter's end all be all for the rest of her life, and she never needs anyone else in her life but me. And we're
and
going to be
I want to
besties for the
I
resties.
And I can't wait to get to the stage that I've already been through, which is the late teens, where you're just a life coach. Like, I just enjoy being
Just,
a
I will
life
be on the
coach.
couch if you need
Um,
advice.
and with adulthood, you're just basically a life culture consultant. Like, they're gonna call you up and be like, "What do you think about this?" And you'll be like, "Can I give advice?" And their answer is gonna be yes or no, and you have to respect that. And so, like, if you are living within the bounds of those parenting stages and what your child developmentally needs, that's a great starting place to really ask yourself what needs to happen next. For you, I'm hearing a lot of different things, but one of your whys when you made the decision to step away from your professional goals, which I know was a huge priority for you, even as a parent and as much as you love your child, um, but you recognize, like, I have to give care to my daughter. I have to be my daughter's caregiver right now, because that is the developmental stage that she is in, and that matches up with my why of getting her to where she can actually communicate and do these things. Like, I I am so sorry. It sounds a little bit like my children are throwing bowling balls. Can you hear that at all?
No, I can't. Not
Okay,
on my
awesome.
end.
I am very glad that no one else can hear that. I'm hearing something. I thought it was thundering outside.
I saw you take your headphones off and I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, there's
But
thunder
yeah,
happening.
I mean, so basically, and this is extrapolating on a therapy that I've had for the last several years. But so people, you cannot experience, oh my gosh, I'm going to say this wrong. I hope my
That's
therapist doesn't
okay.
listen to this
Well,
podcast. Basically,
I
you
really just
can't
wanna, like, tolerate
anticipate
you.
happiness and you can't feel past happiness. Happiness only exists in the present.
Yes,
And
that's
so if
so
you
real.
don't live in the present, if you don't practice mindfulness, if you don't live in the present, you will not experience happiness. You will see moments that you
Yes.
could have been happy, or maybe even moments that you were happy. And you will look ahead and try to set up moments where happiness could happen, but then something could also happen to those moments and it might not be happy.
Yes, you
But
can't
you can
live in those
only
spaces.
you can only experience happiness in the present. And so part of mindfulness and setting yourself up for those would be, what am I doing right now? Why am I doing it right now? How does this serve my family?
Yeah.
And how does
Well,
this serve me as like a
I was gonna
bigger
say,
portion
how does
of
this
myself? Because
serve
like
me?
I would say that we would need whys for other things like our marriages
Oh, yeah.
and I mean, like, why am I reading Matthew Perry's biography right now? You know what I mean? Like,
Because you
I
need
am.
something to laugh about.
Well, it's not laughable. Oh my gosh, it's very serious.
Oh, no.
But
Is it really?
I
Okay,
just
I'm gonna cross that off my list.
well, it's not
Sorry,
laughable
Matthew
because
Perry.
it's about his journey to sobriety and all this
Oh,
difficult stuff and
wow.
how Friends is tied into that and everything like that, and I'm like, "Why am I so fascinated by this biography?" And I think it's just because I've always just really appreciated the fact that he's been honest about it.
And resilience, yeah.
And
That
I
honesty and
appreciate
resilience is
resilience and I appreciate honesty, and maybe we don't have to look at every decision of our lives and be like, "Why?"
well, but
But
no,
if
I
you're
think
spending
that
huge amounts of time doing something, maybe you do need to ask why.
yeah, I mean, I think that, like, if you're questioning something or if you're unhappy with something, the best example of this in my own personal life is I hate preparing meals for my family. I everyone in my family knows this. I hate cooking. I hate being in the kitchen. I mean, I'm a normal person. Sometimes I like to go in and be like, I'm going to cook this new recipe I saw on the internet. But like the daily deciding what is needed to feed people, trying to come up with balanced meals. I have two children that have specific health needs. I just got past one that had severe allergic things and we were free of all of these foods. You know, my husband himself has intolerances. I myself have intolerances. Like there's a Venn diagram that looks like a tornado of what can be eaten in my house safely for everyone. And then there's like little dots in there that are like, well, and this is not going to work for everyone. And so on that night, you're preparing two meals. Like,
Can't have this if we cook the tomatoes this way. Can't
yes,
have this
it's
if we cook
real.
the potatoes that way.
Oh,
Yeah,
and
and
you're
then I
going to make,
walk into the
you're
grocery
going to
store and I'm
make,
like, "Ooh."
well, and then you're gonna make double, but you need to remember to freeze it because it's in the refrigerator. Your MCAS will flare. You can't have any, but everyone else can. Like, it's a very specific thing. And so I had to sit down about 6 months ago, and be like, what is behind this? Like, I am so unhappy. Is there a way that I can reframe this for myself using that retrospective of what's really hard about this and then using the anticipation of what can be changed, you know, that past and that future perspective that you're talking about and really going deep into those things. And what I realized was I can make it a million times easier on myself if I just, the day I get home from the grocery store, look at everything we have and plan out meals until the next time I need to go to the grocery store, and then mark it on the calendar the next day I need to go to the grocery store. Bam, done. Um, and yeah, that seems like a really simple thing, but when I backed it all up, the why for me was not food related at all. It was time management related for me. Was
Mm,
I was feeling so bad about myself and down on myself every time it would roll around to 5 o'clock and I'd go, oh, I need to go start dinner, and it wouldn't be thawed. Like, and I was immediately mad at myself of, oh, now you have to do twice the work and you have to figure this out and and so I do think like there's an answer there if you are finding yourself miserable with an aspect of your life, or you are finding yourself struggling with an aspect of your life, especially around parenting. You know, what can your goals be? Because another why for me with feeding my family is that I want a little bit of control over what my kids are getting nutrition wise, because when they're at school, I don't really have that. When they're, just snacking away, like I don't feel good about that. Like I want to be able to do that
Right.
nutritionally because I know how it impacts their development. And
But if you
because of
define that
that,
why and the words adventurous and farm fresh aren't in there, then
exactly.
you can mix a bunch of food and put it in the freezer. You can,
Yeah.
like you can make the same foods every Monday through Friday
Yeah.
in the same
Exactly.
order. You know what I mean? Like
You ask my
I
husband, he does
love to
that.
cook. I want to instill a love of cooking in my toddler. She loves to cook with me, and so like I specifically like to see her cooking with me every night. She likes to do it. It's part of our like bonding process. Is she's always
Yeah.
helping me cook dinner.
And I no longer enjoy cooking with my individuals that are small because one touches the stove every single time, and it's not the
Every single
2-year-old.
time.
It is not the 2-year-old. And the 2-year-old fixates on the sink and just wants to play in the sink. And
Yeah.
then we go back to the aforementioned eczema thing. So it's one of those things where it's like
It all comes back to an eczema flare up.
one day we can get into those things, but right now the why for me is I need you to eat this food, I need it off my plate, I need the time management back. Sit down. Well,
Yeah,
you
and
can
I think
you can
that's
eggs later. Like it's just if you know what your why is, and I know we've said this a million times, and I really hope the point's coming across because I don't feel like I'm doing a good job, but I just if you know where your goals are, if you know where your priorities are, then you can fix something instead of it just being soul sucking for a long period of time. And then when it becomes a problem, you have to deal with it because it's festering. Like if you know what course you're on, course correction is easier. And that comes from learning how to sail a boat with my husband
that,
because I
that comes
didn't
from
know.
learning how to sail a boat.
Well, I did. I mean, the truth is, this is actually a very funny story. The truth is, the first time I went out on the sailboat with my husband, first off, the mast fell off. That was not great. But I didn't know what I was doing, and he didn't realize how like nothing I knew. Like he really anticipated me to have a higher level of knowledge than I did. So by the time we both realized that I did not know what I was doing, we were out in the middle of a lake, and the course correction was going to take 2 hours, and we needed to go back to the children on the shore who were being watched by a responsible adult. Don't come for me. But it's like and then we tried to course correct, and at that point something snapped and the mast fell off. And so then we
Oh
had to
man.
paddle. We had to paddle back to shore, and I spent the entire time thinking, if I had just stopped him and said, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm feeling nervous about this. You don't understand. You keep
What
saying,
is our
yeah, uh-huh.
goal?
Well, and just really like even digging into the specifics. If I had really paid attention to myself, because I kid you not, I was like, sure, yeah, he thinks I know this. I can totally do this. I Googled it for a second. I got this.
I can wing
Like,
it.
and it's like, I
And
wasn't being honest with myself.
some of sailing, some of motherhood, some of hobbies, sometimes you can wing it. But
Oh,
when you're
yeah.
overloaded, winging it has a much higher cost to benefit ratio. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that can go wrong if you wing it poorly.
Well, and if you start winging it without knowing why you're needing to wing it, so like you can let things go if you know what your priorities are. But if you just start letting things go without knowing that, then 3 days down the line, you're going to be like, we've eaten mac and cheese for every meal for 3 days. And that's bothering me. And now I feel
And no
really
one has
depressed.
clean clothes.
No one
And
has clean clothes, and I'm dying here. Like, and
no.
then you have to dig yourself out of a deeper hole. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is if you know where you're going, then you know where to put your foot. Like, you got the steps laid
You
out
keep
for you.
saying that exact phrase in like different analogies, and it's getting more amazing each time.
I'm so
If you
sorry.
know where you're going, you it's so funny how you say that.
Well, but I mean,
Um,
so actually,
but it's true.
I
And
have a
so
better metaphor
basically,
for you.
knowing your why, knowing your priorities, setting your goals, being mindful, these are all ways of saying the same thing. It's
Yes.
just the importance of that actual definition. It's the
Yeah.
importance and the impact of defining it.
Well, and being fair enough to yourself to take the time to think about it. Being fair enough and treating yourself kindly enough to sit back and think, okay, I can be honest with myself about hating preparing foods for my family. And when I push those negative feelings aside, now we can actually talk about what I'm going to be doing about it instead of bury, because I don't want to talk about not liking making foods because that sounds like I don't care about what my children eat. And that like the spiral that can happen when you're lying to yourself or
Do
trying
you
not to
think
acknowledge your real feelings.
do you think that defining your why and setting out like what success would be, like defining your why, picking the parameters of what would be successful for your like family, for your life, for your journey as a mother specifically, do you think that could help battle mom guilt?
Oh, 100%.
Because at work, like in a professional setting, especially in engineering or any sort of technical field, we set like um, different like quarterly objectives, yearly objectives,
Yeah.
weekly objectives, project specific objectives. And so if you don't get XYZ fire put out that popped up, but you do meet your objectives, you are successful.
Yeah, I say yes, 100%. It may be different for each person how much it alleviates, but for me, so much because it is easier. Like I'll tell you right now, it is not a priority for me to make sure that that our grass is mowed in front of our house. Like it's fine. I know that it's a priority to my husband. So, either I can start the week knowing, hey, he mentioned that he wants to mow the lawn. I can make it a priority to pull the kids in for an evening so he doesn't have to mow around, you know, kamikaze children who just run in front of the mower. But also this week specifically, he's been sick. And so I was able to take the kids out with me and we used our little, it's like a self-propelling, we're very privileged to be able to have like a one of those like battery operated ones. And so I was able
Like
to
a
get
push
out
mower that
there.
helps you push it.
Yes, yeah, it has like a little self-propulsion
Yeah, it's
thing
just
on
self
it.
propelled. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the term. But like because it was that, I was able to push it. I was able to mow the front yard. I didn't do an excellent job. I had to
It's
go
not
back
a
out there.
professional grade
Yeah,
could,
I
like
had to
out
go
there
back
with
out
the
there
little
today.
scissors. I always think of the sitcoms where the guy's out there with the scissors making sure
Oh, I
every
know.
blade of grass is exactly an inch and a half tall or whatever.
Yeah, but because I knew that it was his priority and he was going to spend the entire weekend beating himself up about it because we do have some friends coming over tonight to play outside, etc., etc. Like I I was able to make that a priority of my own. And I think
Mm,
if you know your priorities and you can communicate them, then you can also ask for help in a way that matters. You're not
that
just
is real.
screaming
And
into the void, I'm overwhelmed.
if you as a spouse know your other person's why, you might understand their triggers as well.
Yeah.
Because I
Well,
think my husband does a really, really good job of understanding that for me, our daughter's communication is very, very important.
yeah.
And so the days where she is not communicating or the days that she is screaming and throwing things instead of because she's a year and a half old. And
That's
sometimes she
normal
just
behavior, but also
sometimes she says milk and she says it very quiet and she says it very sweetly and she says milk please, and then you get her milk and she grabs it by the straw and she flings it at you and throws and screams, "No milk!"
Oh, love that.
And we're just, and but then
And
that's
sometimes
when my
they're like,
husband locks eyes with me because he knows if he doesn't lock eyes with me, I'm going to lock eyes with her. And it's going to be a whole Godzilla versus, oh gosh, what is Godzilla versus King Kong or whatever.
yeah.
And it's going to be like a whole thing. And the
Who's
house is going to be
Godzilla
split
and
in two
King Kong?
and it's going to be terrible. King Kong? What did I say?
Who's Godzilla and who's King Kong in that situation?
I don't even know.
I love
But you
that.
know what I mean? Like it's gonna be so bad
No, but
if he doesn't
also,
lock eyes with me in that minute because he knows it's super triggering for me when she chooses to throw something or scream instead of just communicating.
yeah.
And that is probably right now one of my biggest challenges of mothering a toddler, and it's part of life. It's perfectly developmentally normal. There are
Yeah.
lots of things that you can
Know that
do. I have
ahead of
read all the books.
Yeah, you can know that ahead of time of like, this is age appropriate. So I'm going to recognize that in myself and also recognize that it's triggering for me and then not fall into this weird, what have I done wrong? I'm going to Google a million times why my 1.5-year-old's yelling at me because it's completely normal. And then I'm going to feel really invalidated by the internet. Like
And
my,
for him to know that that is my goal and then therefore that is my trigger, for him to be on my side and for him to just go, oh, yeah, okay,
that happened.
let's do something else. Sometimes he'll even just physically step in and just and then he'll do the correction and he'll do the whatever the milk in the different colored cup was or whatever it was. You know what I mean? And so like I'm getting pretty excited as we're talking about it because I think defining your whys, defining success, communicating that can also help with both triggers and with mom guilt.
Oh, yeah. Because the other thing is, I was sick this week, and yet, we did a lot of screen time. We did a lot of mommy's wearing a mask and can't go outside because mommy's gonna die from the heat in the mask. Like, we did a lot of you can't sit on mommy's lap right now because mommy's wearing a mask and you keep trying to pull the mask off and that's not safe for everybody. So now you have to be on the ground and now you're mad about it. And it was as simple as like both my husband and my oldest looking at me occasionally and being like, "Yeah, you're doing a good job." Or
Because you were
Jade,
sick and it was a very obvious goal, not get
yeah,
everyone else sick.
yeah. And my husband literally said at one point, like, "You've done a really good job with the 2-year-old." And he was like, overall, like he is a very good little boy. And like just hearing that, there was no specifics, there was no, but just knowing that my priority is to raise good humans really helped him know how to comfort me in that moment. Um, and so I don't know. I feel like there's a lot around maternal mental health. There's a lot of conversation around mom guilt and struggles and whatever, but I'm not seeing a lot of conversation around what is your goal as a mother? Because we think it's defined for us by society. We think it is raise humans that don't grow up and murder other humans. Like,
Right, you think it's survive because all you hear
oh
about
yeah, survive's
of
another one.
parenting young children is to survive.
Yeah. Or then you hear the opposite one, which is like your children can only eat, full organic and, can't do any of these things and you have to protect your child from the world and, like all of those like kind of different like subsets of motherhood that have these very specific lined out goals. I think, like there's even I don't know if you've watched this at all, but I watched part of the Duggar documentary and like
I have not watched any of it yet.
very clearly religion defined their why for them. And I can almost respect that. I mean, obviously there's some conversations about child abuse that is not for today, but um it's very clear what their goals were in raising their children. And I was like, hey, they knew it, they communicated, they made a TV show about it. Like the way that they got their message out is not necessarily the problem. I mean, there's issues with everything else, but like it really resonated with me around this conversation that I wanted to have with you is like you have to know a little bit about yourself and your priorities and your goals and everything before you can address everything else. So I know, like, I know I've dug into this a million times. The mental image that I need you to have is that you can't mow your yard if you don't have a plan, because yesterday I let my 6-year-old mow the yard. I let him be in
You are
charge of where the mower went.
you're so heavy in the analogies today. I
No,
don't
no,
even
no.
know. Is that
I
truly an
love it.
analogy?
No, it's not an analogy. It's a mental picture. I just want you to picture a 6-year-old taking off with a lawnmower, and how,
You have
like,
to know what your property boundaries are before you can mow your yard. That's what you're trying to
yes,
say?
yes.
Uh-huh.
Went into our neighbor's yard twice,
Oh boy.
and thank
My
goodness our
neighbor makes it very obvious where our property line is. Very, very kind, retired older gentleman live next, and his wife live next to us. And I swear he mows like twice a week.
oh yeah, mine does
I think
too.
he just
We have
I think he
the
just
same kind of
enjoys
thing.
doing it. I've offered before that he could
Mine
just
has
mow
a
ours
little
too, but he didn't.
Mine has
But
a little riding lawnmower too, so he's out there
yeah,
cruising, and he listens to
exactly.
Kelly Clarkson all the
And
time.
there's just such a straight line. It's
Yeah,
always, and no matter if we've just mowed, his
it's still
lawn
there.
is shorter. It's shorter.
That's awesome.
But yeah, okay. So a very analogy heavy, but
Yeah, whatever. My
I
brain
think this
exists
is
in
such a
analogy.
great therapy session. Actually,
It was.
I'd like to charge you for this session. Or I guess you
You
could
could,
charge me and I'll charge you and we'll come out even. Done.
yes, done. That's basically how we do everything around here.
Fair. That is fair.
Well, you're a good mom, and I'm glad that you have spent the last like 8 months or however long you've been home, like working on defining your why and working on it. I think it's hard to stick to a goal. And I think it's really shown like the dedication you have to your goals and to your child. So you're a good mom.
Thank you. I think you're a great mom. And
And
maybe
let's
a
rip.
terrible lawnmower, but obviously a good mom. Although apparently that means nothing to you, as you mentioned earlier in the message.
It means nothing to me. No,
Your children are coping well, especially
thank
with
you.
the lack of strep throat. So,
Woohoo! Now I'll have to update if we get strep throat.
right.